Throughout my early days of childhood, my family were like flies, always moving, never staying at a place for too long. We moved to Melbourne when I was 9 and waited until I went to university in Sydney. I remember tiny bits of pieces of different homes of where I used to live in my childhood, but most of these memories were foggy and irrelevant, as most of my memories were from when we settled in Melbourne. Yet there was a collection of memories that were clear as day, as if it happened yesterday. We were living in a house located in rural areas in Goulburn. It was a relatively large house for a family of 3. You could say it was a waste of space, but it was the only house available that was at least 30 minutes away from where my dad worked. A day after my 7th birthday, which was just celebrated by my parents and me, I got the chickenpox. The doctor said no more playing outside for about 2 to 3 weeks. It was horrible timing to be stuck to a bed as we were in the middle of packing our stuff to move to Victoria, as most of my stuff was already packed away by my mum, leaving my room empty. My mum would bring me yogurt to help with my stomach and several picture books that served as the primary source for enjoyment for the next few weeks. I don't remember how I met Mr. Bossman. It was probably a week after I was diagnosed with chickenpox. The earliest memory I could recall of the small creature was asking me if he had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Bossman, but he looks nothing like a boss nor a man. In fact, he's a mini half human, a half goat that has the head and the rump of a goat and the body of a human. You kind of look like Fawn from Narnia, I said as he flipped through one of my picture books. Mr. Bossman paused and gave me a perplexed look. Fawn? Who's Fawn? He questioned. I shrugged. You know, the movie Narnia? He's a servant from Aslan who was very kind and loyal. Oh, Mr. Bossman continued his activity. You don't need him. He's not the same as having a real friend. I recalled Mr. Bossman retreating every time my mum stopped by to check in on me. I hide under your bed, he later clarified. If your parents sees me, they might not let us play together anymore. The 4th morning after I met him, he welcomed me with an enormous grin on his face. Let's play a new game today, he offered. We have to hold up until after your mum checks in on you because it is a secret game between you and me. After my mum delivered my yogurt and books at the usual time, Mr. Bossman slipped out from under the bed and pulled my hand. We need to go to the room at the end of the hallway, he exclaimed. I refused at first, as my parents forbade me to leave my bed without their permission, but Mr. Bossman persevered until I gave in. The room had no furnishings or backdrop. Its only distinctive feature was in the window opposite the entryway. Mr. Bossman dashed across the room and gave the window a firm push, hurling it open. He then caused me to look at the ground beneath. We were on the 2nd floor of the house, yet it was on a slope, which made the drop farther than 2 stories. I like to play a game called Pretend up here, Mr. Bossman explained. I imagine that there is a big, soft and bouncy jumping castle below this window. Then I jump. If you use your imagination, you bounce right back up like a feather. I want you to try. Despite the fact I was 7 years old, a hint of suspicion shot through my mind as I looked down and thought about the risks. I don't know. It's a long drop, I remarked. If it were a short drop, it wouldn't be any fun. You might as well just jump on the real jumping castle. I imagined myself falling through thin air to bounce right back up on the window like a feather. But the realist in me won. Maybe another time, I replied. I don't know if I had the imagination. I might get hurt. For a second, Mr. Bossman's face reshaped into a growl. Okay, if you say so, he said. He spent the remainder of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. He wasn't fun to play with anymore. Mr. Bossman frequently woke me up in the middle of the night, saying he put a new and real jumping castle beneath the window, one I couldn't see in the dark. I always refused and tried to go back to sleep. Yet, Mr. Bossman continued, sometimes even staying by my bed till the sun rises, encouraging me to jump. One morning, my mum came in and told me I could walk around outside. She figured the outside air would be good for me. I immediately put on my trainers and jogged out to the back porch, longing the feeling of the sun in my face. Mr. Bossman was waiting for me. There's something I need you to see, he revealed. I gave him a peculiar look as he added, it's safe, I promise. I followed him to the start of a steep trail which went through the woods behind the house. I've had a couple of friends about your age. When they were prepared, I brought them down this trail to a different place. You're not ready yet, but one day I'd like to take you there. I came back to the house, curious about what lay beyond that trail. It was time to move again. The last pile of our things has been stuffed into a moving truck. I chose to keep my departure a secret from Mr. Bossman because my gut told me it was the right move to do.
Well, then night when the truck at 5 a.m., I felt his hand on my shoulder. It's your last move, pal. I promise. Once your big man gets promoted, you can finally settle down in one place and never move again.
As the truck was going to turn onto the main road, I glanced back at the house. For a second I saw Mr. Bossman's silhouette in my bedroom window, motionless, glaring with eyes that could slaughter. I immediately whirled my head forward as it sent chills down my spine. 20 years later, I returned to Goulburn. The land where our house remained upon was empty except for the foundation, as the house burned down a couple of years after my family moved out. Out of curiosity, I pursued the steep trail that Mr. Bossman revealed to me. Part of me was waiting for him to jump out and scare the living daylights out of me. Yet, I felt that Mr. Bossman was gone, tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail finished at the Goulburn Memorial Cemetery. I realized that many of these tombstones belonged to children.